For privacy reasons, names and places have been changed. This story is inspired by true events.
On the night of November 28, 1992, 32-year-old Mark Sullivan vanished without a trace after leaving the Crossroads Tavern in downtown Portland, Oregon. The construction foreman had been celebrating the completion of a major project with co-workers when he disappeared somewhere between the bar's front door and his pickup truck parked just 2 blocks away. Despite an extensive investigation involving Portland police, private investigators hired by his family, and hundreds of volunteers, no trace of Mark was ever found. The case became one of Oregon's most perplexing missing person mysteries, leaving his wife and 2 young children devastated and the tight-knit construction community forever changed by the loss of one of their most respected members. For 3 years, Mark's disappearance remained unsolved, gradually fading from daily headlines but never from the minds of those who refused to give up hope that the hard-working family man might someday find his way home. Then, in December 1995, bartender Jenny Martinez was renovating the basement storage area of the Crossroads Tavern when she made a discovery that would finally provide answers to questions that had haunted the bar and the community for years. Hidden beneath a loose floor tile in a forgotten corner of the basement, Martinez found Mark's wallet containing his identification, credit cards, and family photos. The wallet would not only solve the mystery of Mark's fate, but would also expose a truth that was far more sinister than anyone could have imagined, revealing that the answers to his disappearance had been literally beneath their feet all along. This is the complete investigation into Mark Sullivan's disappearance, from the busy downtown bar where he was last seen to the shocking revelation that would emerge from beneath the floorboards of the very establishment where his final night had begun. Chapter 1: Last Call. November 28, 1992 was a cold Saturday evening in downtown Portland, Oregon, and the Crossroads Tavern was filled with the usual weekend crowd of construction workers, local residents, and regulars who had made the establishment their second home for decades. For 32-year-old Mark Sullivan, it was supposed to be a celebration of completing the biggest project of his career. Mark Sullivan was a respected construction foreman who had worked his way up through the ranks over 15 years in the building trades. He supervised a crew of 12 men working on commercial construction projects throughout the Portland metropolitan area, and his reputation for completing jobs on time and under budget had made him one of the most sought-after supervisors in the industry. The Sullivan family lived in a modest 3-bedroom house in southeast Portland, where Mark shared his life with his wife Carol, 29, and their 2 children, Emily, 8, and Ryan, 5. Mark was known as a devoted family man who rarely went out drinking, preferring to spend his evenings at home helping with homework and playing with his kids. However, November 28th was special. Mark's crew had just completed construction of a major office complex downtown, finishing the project 2 weeks ahead of schedule and significantly under budget. The successful completion represented the culmination of 8 months of hard work and had earned Mark's company a substantial bonus that would be shared among the crew members. Mark's foreman, Tommy Rodriguez, had organized the celebration at the Crossroads Tavern, a blue-collar bar that had been serving the construction community for over 30 years. The tavern was located on Southwest Morrison Street, just a few blocks from several major construction sites, making it a popular gathering place for workers celebrating completed projects. The Crossroads Tavern was owned and operated by Frank Chen, a 45-year-old former construction worker who had purchased the establishment in 1985 after a back injury ended his career in the building trades. Chen understood his clientele and had created an atmosphere that was welcoming to hard-working men who wanted to unwind after long days of physical labor. Mark arrived at the Crossroads around 6:30 p.m. with 7 members of his construction crew, all in high spirits about their successful project completion. The group ordered pitchers of beer and settled into their usual corner booth, where they spent the evening discussing the challenges they had overcome and sharing stories about their most memorable moments from the project. Throughout the evening, Mark was his usual self, gregarious with his crew members, friendly with other bar patrons, and moderate in his drinking. Bartender Sam Wilson, who had been working at the Crossroads for 6 years, later told investigators that Mark had consumed approximately 4 beers over the course of 4 hours, making him far from intoxicated. The celebration continued until around 10:30 p.m., when several crew members began leaving to get home to their families. Mark had planned to leave earlier, as he had promised Carol he would be home by 10 p.m. But the camaraderie of the evening and the satisfaction of completing such a successful project had kept him at the tavern longer than intended. At approximately 10:45 p.m., Mark announced to his remaining co-workers that he needed to head home. He settled his tab with bartender Wilson, left a generous tip, and said goodnight to the crew members who were staying for another round. Wilson remembered that Mark seemed completely sober and in good spirits as he prepared to leave. Mark's pickup truck, a blue 1989 Ford F-150, was parked on Southwest 3rd Avenue, approximately 2 blocks from the tavern. The walk from the crossroads to his truck was along well-lit city streets through downtown Portland's business district, an area that was generally considered safe even during evening hours. Security cameras from a nearby office building showed Mark leaving the Crossroads Tavern at exactly 10:52 p.m., walking north on Morrison Street toward the intersection where he would turn toward his parked truck. He appeared to be walking normally and showed no signs of distress or intoxication. However, Mark Sullivan never reached his pickup truck. When Carol became concerned about his late arrival and called the tavern around midnight, she learned that Mark had left over an hour earlier. Her calls to his pager went unanswered, and his truck was found still parked on 3rd Avenue the following morning. The discovery of Mark's abandoned truck launched an immediate investigation by the Portland Police Bureau. The vehicle showed no signs of struggle or foul play, and Mark's keys, work tools, and a jacket were still inside, suggesting that he had never reached his truck after leaving the tavern. Detective Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell was assigned to lead the investigation into Mark's disappearance. Her initial assumption was that Mark might have been the victim of a robbery gone wrong, as downtown Portland had experienced several violent crimes targeting individuals walking alone late at night. However, the investigation revealed that Mark had been carrying approximately $200 in cash when he left the tavern, along with credit cards and other valuables that would have made him an attractive target for robbers. The absence of his wallet and personal effects suggested that he might indeed have been robbed, but the lack of any witnesses or physical evidence made the case extremely challenging. The 2-block area between the Crossroads Tavern and Mark's truck was systematically searched by police officers and volunteers, but no evidence of a struggle or crime was discovered. The downtown streets had been busy with weekend foot traffic, yet no one reported seeing anything unusual or suspicious around the time of Mark's disappearance. By dawn on November 29th, Mark Sullivan had been missing for over 8 hours, and investigators had found no concrete evidence to explain what had happened during those crucial minutes when he had walked away from the tavern and vanished into the Portland night. The hard-working construction foreman who had been celebrating the biggest success of his career had disappeared as completely as if he had never existed. The search for Mark Sullivan was about to become one of Portland's most intensive missing person investigations, involving hundreds of volunteers and law enforcement officers in a desperate effort to find a husband and father who seemed to have vanished without leaving any trace of where he had gone or what had happened to him. Chapter 2. The Investigation. The search for Mark Sullivan intensified dramatically on November 29, 1992, as the Portland Police Bureau recognized that his disappearance from downtown Portland's business district required immediate and comprehensive investigation to determine whether he had been the victim of a crime. Detective Mitchell began with extensive interviews of everyone who had been at the Crossroads Tavern on the night of Mark's disappearance. She spoke with his co-workers, other bar patrons, and the tavern staff, looking for anyone who might have noticed something unusual or suspicious during the evening. The interviews revealed that Mark had been his normal, friendly self throughout the evening and had shown no signs of distress, conflict, or unusual behavior. His co-workers confirmed that he had been celebrating the successful completion of their construction project and had been looking forward to getting home to his family. Bartender Sam Wilson provided detailed information about Mark's activities during the evening, including the amount he had consumed and his demeanor when he left the tavern. Wilson was certain that Mark had been sober and in good spirits when he departed, making it unlikely that his disappearance was related to alcohol impairment. Detective Mitchell also interviewed Frank Chen, the tavern owner, who had been present during the evening but had not interacted directly with Mark's group. Chen confirmed that the evening had been routine, with no unusual incidents or disturbances that might have been related to Mark's disappearance. The investigation expanded to include a comprehensive canvass of the area between the Crossroads Tavern and Mark's pickup truck. Officers interviewed residents, business owners, and anyone else who might have been in the downtown area during the time of Mark's disappearance. Several witnesses reported seeing a man matching Mark's description walking north on Morrison Street around 11 p.m., but none could provide specific details about his activities or destination. The downtown area had been busy with weekend foot traffic, making it difficult for witnesses to notice individual pedestrians. The Portland Police Bureau also examined security camera footage from businesses along Mark's route, looking for any evidence of his movements after he left the tavern. However, camera coverage in the early 1990s was limited, and most of the footage was too unclear to provide useful information. One potentially significant lead emerged from a security guard at a nearby office building who reported seeing what appeared to be a confrontation between two men on Southwest 3rd Avenue around 11 p.m. However, the guard had been too far away to see details and couldn't confirm whether either individual was Mark. The investigation also focused on Mark's background, looking for any personal or professional conflicts that might have motivated someone to harm him. However, interviews with family, friends, and business associates revealed no evidence of enemies, debts, or other problems that might have put Mark at risk. Mark's wife Carol provided investigators with detailed information about his routine, finances, and relationships. She confirmed that Mark had no history of disappearing, no marital problems, and no reason to leave his family voluntarily. Their marriage was stable, and Mark was devoted to his children. The construction industry background investigation revealed that Mark was highly respected among his peers and had no known conflicts with co-workers, contractors, or clients. His company's owner, James Walsh, described Mark as one of his most reliable employees and expressed complete confidence in his character. However, the investigation did reveal that Mark's recent success with the office complex project had made him a prominent figure in Portland's construction community, potentially increasing his visibility to people who might target successful contractors for robbery or other crimes. The search for Mark expanded throughout Portland and surrounding areas, with volunteers checking parks, construction sites, abandoned buildings, and any location where someone might be hidden or where a body might be concealed. The Oregon State Police provided additional resources, including helicopter support for aerial searches. The case received extensive media coverage throughout Oregon and the Pacific Northwest, with Mark's photograph appearing on television news programs and in newspapers. The story of a construction foreman disappearing after a celebration captured public attention and generated numerous tips from concerned citizens. However, most of the tips proved to be false leads or cases of mistaken identity. Several people reported seeing men who resembled Mark in various locations throughout Oregon and neighboring states, but investigation revealed that none of these sightings involved Mark himself. One tip that seemed particularly promising came from a truck driver who reported seeing a man matching Mark's description hitchhiking on Interstate 5 south of Portland on November 29. However, when investigators interviewed the witness more extensively, he admitted that he couldn't be certain of the date or the person's identity. The FBI joined the investigation in December 1992, bringing federal resources and expertise in cases involving missing persons who might have been transported across state lines. Special Agent Robert Kim was assigned to coordinate with local authorities and analyze the possibility that Mark had been abducted. Agent Kim's investigation focused on the possibility that Mark had been targeted by someone who knew about his successful construction project and might have assumed he was carrying a large amount of cash. However, Mark's co-workers confirmed that project bonuses were paid by check, not cash, making this theory less likely. As December 1992 turned into January 1993, Mark had been missing for over a month without any confirmed sightings or physical evidence. The investigation had involved hundreds of law enforcement officers and volunteers but had produced no concrete leads about his whereabouts. The case was particularly frustrating because Mark had disappeared from a busy downtown area where there should have been multiple witnesses and security cameras. The lack of any evidence suggested either that his disappearance had been very carefully planned or that something had happened to him in a location that hadn't been searched. Detective Mitchell continued to focus on the two-block area between the tavern and Mark's truck, believing that the key to solving the case lay somewhere along that route. However, repeated searches of the area had revealed no evidence of what might have happened to Mark during those crucial minutes. The Crossroads Tavern became an unofficial headquarters for the search effort, with Carol Sullivan and other family members regularly visiting to distribute flyers and coordinate with volunteers. The tavern's owner, Frank Chen, was supportive of these efforts and allowed the family to use the establishment as a meeting place. As 1993 progressed, the active search for Mark was gradually scaled back, though the case remained open and active. The transition from intensive daily investigation to periodic review was devastating for the Sullivan family, who had to accept that their husband and father might not be found quickly despite the enormous effort that had been made. Chapter 3. Cold Case. The years following Mark Sullivan's disappearance were marked by persistent efforts from his family and periodic reviews by law enforcement, but the case gradually took on the characteristics of an unsolved mystery that seemed to defy explanation despite the extensive resources that had been devoted to finding him. Carol Sullivan refused to accept that her husband had simply vanished without a trace from downtown Portland. She maintained regular contact with Detective Mitchell and other investigators, providing them with any new information or potential leads that came to their attention. Carol also worked with national missing person organizations, sharing Mark's story and photograph through various media channels. She participated in awareness campaigns and spoke at events designed to support families dealing with missing loved ones, drawing strength from helping others while continuing to search for her husband. Detective Mitchell continued to review Mark's case file regularly, looking for connections to similar disappearances or new investigative techniques that might provide fresh insights. She maintained contact with the FBI and participated in regional task forces focused on missing adults. In 1993, 1 year after Mark's disappearance, the case was featured on the television show Unsolved Mysteries. The program included interviews with Mark's family, co-workers from the construction project, and investigators involved in the search efforts. The television exposure generated hundreds of tips from viewers across the country, but most proved to be false leads or cases of mistaken identity. Several people reported seeing men who resembled Mark in various locations throughout the western United States, but investigation revealed that none of these sightings involved Mark himself. One tip that seemed particularly credible came from a construction worker in California who reported seeing someone matching Mark's description working on a job site near San Francisco. However, investigation revealed that the individual was a different person who happened to have a similar appearance and background. The false leads were emotionally exhausting for the Sullivan family, who experienced renewed hope with each tip followed by crushing disappointment when it didn't provide answers. The uncertainty about Mark's fate made it impossible to properly grieve or move forward with their lives. Meanwhile, the Crossroads Tavern continued to operate as a gathering place for Portland's construction community, though Mark's disappearance had cast a shadow over the establishment. Frank Chen, the owner, had been deeply affected by the case and had cooperated fully with all aspects of the investigation. Chen had allowed investigators to search every area of the tavern multiple times, including the basement storage areas, office spaces, and even areas that were not accessible to customers. However, these searches had revealed no evidence related to Mark's disappearance. The tavern's regular customers included many of Mark's former co-workers and friends from the construction industry, who often discussed the case and shared theories about what might have happened. The establishment had become an informal memorial to Mark, with his photograph displayed prominently behind the bar. In 1994, Chen decided to undertake a comprehensive renovation of the Crossroads Tavern, including updates to the bar area, dining room, and basement storage facilities. The project was partly motivated by business needs, but also represented an attempt to refresh the establishment's atmosphere after the tragedy of Mark's disappearance. The renovation work was performed by local contractors who were familiar with Mark's case, and many had worked with him on various projects throughout Portland. The workers approached the renovation with particular attention to any areas that might reveal evidence related to Mark's disappearance. However, the 1994 renovation revealed no new evidence related to Mark's case. The workers thoroughly examined all areas of the building, including spaces behind walls and under floors, but found nothing that might explain what had happened to Mark after he left the tavern that November night. Jenny Martinez joined the staff of the Crossroads Tavern as a bartender in early 1995, bringing fresh energy to an establishment that had been subdued by the mystery of Mark's disappearance. Martinez was an experienced bartender who had worked at several Portland establishments and was known for her professionalism and attention to detail. Martinez quickly became familiar with Mark's case through conversations with regular customers and other staff members. She was particularly moved by Carol Sullivan's ongoing search for her husband and the impact that Mark's disappearance had had on the construction community. Throughout 1995, Martinez worked to create a more positive atmosphere at the Crossroads while still honoring Mark's memory. She organized fundraising events for missing person organizations and helped maintain the memorial display that honored Mark and other missing individuals from the Portland area. In December 1995, Chen decided to undertake additional renovation work in the tavern's basement, focusing on improving storage efficiency and updating utilities that had been problematic during the previous year. Martinez volunteered to oversee much of this work, as her attention to detail made her well-suited for organizing the basement areas. The basement renovation required moving decades of accumulated equipment, supplies, and records that had been stored in various areas of the underground space. Martinez approached this task systematically, documenting everything that was found and ensuring that important items were properly preserved. On December 18, 1995, while working in a corner of the basement that had been used for long-term storage, Martinez noticed that one of the floor tiles appeared to be loose. The tile was in an area that was rarely accessed and was partially hidden by boxes and equipment that had been stored there for years. When Martinez lifted the loose tile to examine the subflooring underneath, she discovered a small space that appeared to have been deliberately created to hide something. Inside this hidden compartment, she found an object that would immediately change everything investigators thought they knew about Mark Sullivan's disappearance. Hidden beneath the floor tile was Mark's wallet, containing his driver's license, credit cards, family photographs, and business cards, all the personal identification that he had been carrying when he disappeared from the Crossroads Tavern 3 years earlier. Martinez immediately recognized the significance of her discovery and contacted the Portland Police Bureau to report finding evidence in Mark's case. Within hours, Detective Mitchell and a team of forensic specialists had arrived at the tavern to examine the wallet and the location where it had been concealed. The discovery of Mark's wallet beneath the floor of the Crossroads Tavern would not only provide the first concrete evidence in his case since his disappearance, but would also completely change investigators' understanding of what had happened during Mark's final hours. The wallet had been waiting 3 years to reveal the truth about a case that had puzzled investigators and devastated a family. Chapter 4: Beneath the Floor. December 18, 1995 was the day that would finally solve the Mark Sullivan case. Bartender Jenny Martinez had been renovating the basement storage area when she made the discovery that would provide the first concrete evidence in Mark's disappearance since that November night 3 years earlier. Martinez had been working methodically through the basement, organizing storage areas and updating the facility when she noticed the loose floor tile in a corner that was rarely accessed. The tile appeared to have been deliberately loosened and replaced, creating a small hidden compartment beneath the basement floor. When Martinez carefully lifted the tile, she found Mark's brown leather wallet wedged into the space between the floor joists. The wallet was in good condition despite being hidden for 3 years, and it contained all of Mark's identification and personal items exactly as they would have been when he disappeared. Martinez immediately understood the significance of her discovery and carefully documented the wallet's location with photographs before contacting authorities. She preserved the scene exactly as she had found it, recognizing that the basement had suddenly become a potential crime scene. Detective Mitchell arrived at the Crossroads Tavern within an hour of Martinez's call, accompanied by forensic technicians and evidence specialists from the Portland Police Bureau. The basement was immediately secured, and a systematic examination of the area began. The wallet was carefully removed and examined for fingerprints, DNA evidence, and any other traces that might provide clues about who had hidden it beneath the floor. The wallet contained Mark's driver's license, credit cards, $127 in cash, and several family photographs, exactly as Carol Sullivan had described. The discovery of the wallet in the tavern's basement immediately refocused the investigation on the Crossroads itself, suggesting that whatever had happened to Mark had occurred within the establishment rather than on the street as investigators had previously assumed. Detective Mitchell organized a comprehensive search of the entire basement area, using ground-penetrating radar, metal detectors, and other specialized equipment to examine every inch of the underground space for additional evidence. The search revealed that the basement had a complex layout with multiple storage rooms, utility areas, and spaces that were not readily visible from the main areas. Some of these spaces had been sealed off or forgotten over the years as the building had been modified and renovated. In one of these forgotten areas, investigators made a discovery that would finally provide complete answers about Mark's fate. Behind a false wall that had been constructed sometime in the past, they found human remains that were clearly those of an adult male. The forensic examination of the remains confirmed that they belonged to Mark Sullivan, finally solving the mystery of his disappearance after 3 years. The condition of the remains and the evidence at the scene indicated that Mark had died shortly after his disappearance in November 1992. The cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head, indicating that Mark had been murdered rather than dying from natural causes or accident. The location of his body in the tavern's basement meant that he had never left the establishment alive on the night he disappeared. The discovery of Mark's body in the Crossroads Tavern immediately made the establishment's owner, Frank Chen, a prime suspect in the murder. Chen had been present on the night of Mark's disappearance and had access to all areas of the building, including the basement where the body was hidden. When confronted with the evidence, Chen initially maintained his innocence and claimed that he had no knowledge of how Mark's body had ended up in his basement. However, the physical evidence and the circumstances of the concealment made his involvement undeniable. Further investigation revealed that Chen had been experiencing serious financial problems in 1992 and had been skimming money from the tavern's cash register to pay gambling debts. On the night of November 28th, Chen had attempted to rob Mark of the cash he believed the construction foreman was carrying after his project celebration. According to the evidence reconstructed by investigators, Chen had approached Mark as he was preparing to leave the tavern and had demanded money at gunpoint. When Mark had resisted and attempted to defend himself, Chen had struck him with a heavy object, causing the fatal head injury. Chen had then hidden Mark's body in the basement and had concealed his wallet beneath the floor tile, believing that these locations would never be discovered. He had participated in the search efforts and had cooperated with investigators while knowing that Mark's body was hidden beneath his own establishment. The investigation also revealed that Chen had made several attempts to dispose of Mark's body permanently, but had been prevented by the intensive police investigation and the constant presence of family members and volunteers at the tavern during the search efforts. Chen's deception had been nearly perfect, as he had successfully misdirected the investigation away from the tavern by suggesting that Mark had been the victim of a street crime after leaving the establishment. His cooperation with investigators had made him appear to be a concerned business owner rather than a suspect. However, Chen had made the critical error of keeping Mark's wallet rather than disposing of it with the body. His decision to hide the wallet beneath the basement floor had been motivated by a desire to make Mark's disappearance appear to be a robbery, but it had ultimately provided the evidence needed to expose his crime. The discovery also explained why the extensive street searches had found no evidence of Mark's disappearance. He had never made it to the street. Chen had killed him inside the tavern and had immediately hidden the body, creating the false impression that Mark had vanished somewhere between the bar and his truck. Chen's confession came after he was confronted with overwhelming physical evidence linking him to Mark's murder. He admitted to the robbery attempt and to killing Mark during the struggle, though he claimed that the death had been accidental rather than intentional. The confession revealed that Chen had been planning to rob Mark for several days after learning about the construction project's successful completion and assuming that Mark would be carrying a large amount of cash. However, Mark had actually been carrying only the modest amount found in his wallet. Chen had spent 3 years living with the knowledge that Mark's body was hidden beneath his establishment while maintaining the facade of a concerned business owner who supported the family's search efforts. His deception had been both calculated and cruel, prolonging the family's suffering while profiting from their tragedy. The basement of the Crossroads Tavern, which had been searched multiple times during the original investigation, had successfully concealed Mark's body because Chen had constructed the false wall after the initial searches were completed. His knowledge of construction techniques had enabled him to create a hiding place that had remained undetected for 3 years. Chapter 5. Justice Served. The arrest of Frank Chen on December 20, 1995, marked the end of one of Portland's most deceptive and heartbreaking missing person cases. Chen's confession revealed the full extent of his betrayal, not only of Mark Sullivan but of the entire community that had trusted him and supported the search efforts while Mark's body lay hidden beneath their feet. Detective Mitchell worked with prosecutors to build an airtight case against Chen, utilizing the physical evidence from the basement, his confession, and testimony from witnesses who could establish the timeline of events on November 28, 1992. The evidence was overwhelming and left no doubt about Chen's guilt. The investigation revealed that Chen had been living with enormous psychological pressure since Mark's murder, knowing that discovery was always possible and that his deception could be exposed at any time. His cooperation with the search efforts had been a calculated attempt to appear innocent while misdirecting suspicion away from himself. Chen's financial records confirmed that he had been desperate for money in late 1992, with gambling debts exceeding $50,000 and creditors threatening violence if he didn't pay. His decision to rob Mark had been motivated by desperation, but his subsequent cover-up had been coldly calculated and methodical. The forensic analysis of the basement revealed that Chen had used his construction background to create an elaborate concealment system for Mark's body. The false wall had been constructed with professional skill and had been designed to pass casual inspection while completely hiding the crime scene. Most disturbing was the revelation that Chen had continued to operate the Crossroads Tavern as a gathering place for Mark's friends and co-workers, while knowing that Mark's body was hidden just feet away from where they drank and shared memories of their missing friend. Chen had also callously comforted Carol Sullivan and other family members during their visits to the tavern, offering sympathy and support while concealing his role in Mark's death. His ability to maintain this deception for 3 years demonstrated a level of psychological manipulation that shocked investigators and the community. The discovery of Mark's body finally provided Carol Sullivan and her children with the closure they had desperately sought, though it also brought the devastating confirmation that their husband and father had been murdered by someone they had trusted and who had pretended to help them search. Carol expressed a mixture of relief and anger about the resolution of Mark's case. "We finally have answers and can lay Mark to rest," she said, "but knowing that Frank Chen watched us suffer while hiding the truth makes this even more painful than we ever imagined." Frank Chen was charged with first-degree murder, robbery, and obstruction of justice in Mark's death. The prosecution argued that Chen had planned the robbery in advance and had constructed the elaborate cover-up to avoid detection, making this a premeditated crime rather than a spontaneous act. Chen's defense attorney argued that the killing had been accidental and that Chen had panicked after Mark's death, leading to the concealment of the body. However, the evidence of planning and the sophisticated nature of the cover-up contradicted claims that the crime had been unpremeditated. The trial began in early 1996 and attracted extensive media coverage throughout Oregon. The case had shocked the Portland community, which had never suspected that the trusted tavern owner who had supported the search efforts was actually the killer they were seeking. Jenny Martinez testified about her discovery of Mark's wallet and her shock at learning that she had been working above the location where Mark's body was hidden. Her testimony highlighted how Chen had deceived everyone who worked at or visited the tavern during the 3 years after the murder. Mark's co-workers testified about their visits to the Crossroads during the search efforts and their trust in Chen's support for finding their missing friend. Their testimony demonstrated the depth of Chen's betrayal and the psychological impact of learning that he had been deceiving them throughout their search. Chen was convicted on all charges and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge noted the particularly heinous nature of his crimes, including not only the murder but also the cruel deception that had prolonged the family's suffering for 3 years. The conviction brought justice for Mark Sullivan, but it also exposed the vulnerability of missing person investigations to manipulation by suspects who appeared to be helpful and cooperative. Chen's case became a study in how killers could hide in plain sight while participating in searches for their own victims. The Crossroads Tavern was permanently closed following Chen's conviction, as the community could no longer bear to gather in a place where such deception and cruelty had occurred. The building was eventually demolished, and a small memorial park was established on the site in Mark's honor. Detective Mitchell, who had worked on Mark's case for 3 years, considered Chen's conviction one of the most important achievements of her career. The case had demonstrated the importance of never giving up on missing person investigations and the value of systematic searches even years after a disappearance. Jenny Martinez's discovery had been crucial to solving the case and bringing Chen to justice. Her decision to thoroughly examine the basement during renovation work had uncovered evidence that might have remained hidden indefinitely if the tavern had continued operating normally. The Sullivan family established a foundation in Mark's memory that provided support for families of missing persons and funding for improved investigation techniques. Their advocacy work helped prevent other families from experiencing the prolonged deception and manipulation that Chen had inflicted on them. The case also led to improvements in missing person investigation protocols, particularly emphasizing the importance of maintaining suspicion of all individuals who appeared helpful while having access to potential crime scenes. Chen's deception had nearly been perfect, succeeding only because of an accidental discovery during routine renovation work. Mark Sullivan's wallet, which had led to the breakthrough in his case, was returned to his family after the trial. The wallet had preserved not only the evidence needed to convict his killer, but also the family photographs that represented his love for his wife and children and his dedication to providing for them through his construction work. Frank Chen's elaborate deception had ultimately failed because of his decision to keep Mark's wallet as a trophy rather than disposing of it completely. The wallet had waited 3 years beneath the tavern floor to finally expose the truth and bring justice for a hard-working family man whose only crime had been being in the wrong place when a desperate man decided to commit robbery and murder. Final words. The resolution of Mark Sullivan's case in 1995 brought closure to one of Portland's most shocking missing person investigations. The discovery of his wallet beneath the floor of the Crossroads Tavern had finally exposed the truth about his disappearance and the elaborate deception that had concealed his murder for 3 years. Mark's story led to significant improvements in missing person investigation protocols and highlighted the importance of maintaining suspicion even of individuals who appeared helpful and cooperative. The case demonstrated how killers could manipulate investigations by inserting themselves into search efforts while concealing their crimes. The Sullivan family's advocacy work following the resolution of Mark's case helped improve support services for families of missing persons and funding for advanced investigation techniques. They worked tirelessly to ensure that other families would not experience the prolonged deception and manipulation that had defined their ordeal. Jenny Martinez continued her career in the hospitality industry, always remembering the discovery that had solved Mark's case and brought his killer to justice. Her thorough approach to examining the basement had demonstrated the importance of systematic investigation even in routine maintenance work. The construction community in Portland established safety protocols and support systems that honored Mark's memory while protecting workers from becoming victims of similar crimes. The industry implemented better communication systems for tracking workers' whereabouts and providing assistance when needed. Today, Mark Sullivan's legacy lives on through the investigative improvements and support programs that resulted from his case. His story serves as a reminder that missing person cases require persistent investigation and that answers can sometimes be found in the most unexpected places. The wallet that had been hidden beneath the tavern floor had preserved crucial evidence for 3 years, waiting for someone with the right combination of curiosity and thoroughness to discover it. Mark's case became a testament to the importance of never giving up hope in missing person investigations. Frank Chen remained in prison for the rest of his life, ensuring that he could never again deceive families or communities while concealing violent crimes. His conviction had removed a dangerous individual who had proven capable of committing murder and then manipulating the investigation with calculated cruelty. The site where the Crossroads Tavern had stood became a memorial park that honored Mark and other victims of violent crime in Portland. The park served as a reminder of the importance of community vigilance and the need to support families dealing with missing loved ones. Mark Sullivan's case continues to be studied by law enforcement agencies and missing person organizations as an example of how systematic investigation and community involvement can eventually overcome even the most sophisticated attempts to conceal crimes. His story proved that truth and justice could prevail even when killers believed they had created the perfect cover-up.